Hey friends, Zach here, and it has been a long time since I've recorded a video, but I am back with something that you may be interested in. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some of my trip statistics and many of the financial costs that I endured over the 9 months that I traveled. Before we begin, I want to thank Michael Pellegrino, a longtime watcher and subscriber, for proposing. He says, I'd love to see a summary of the financial costs to do your 50-state trip when it's all over. So in this video, I'm going to do exactly that. Thank you again, Michael, for asking that question, and let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing I'll cover, and it's probably the thing that most of you are interested in, is the financial costs of traveling the country for 9 months. Now, depending on what it is that you expect to experience during your travels, whether that be hotel stays or entertainment, the forms of entertainment that you're paying for, depending on how much you're willing to spend there, your costs may be higher. But for me, I pretty much didn't spend anything on entertainment, and I slept in my car or at a friend's place every single night. So those costs were pretty low, but the large bulk of my costs were gas. So let me break down some of my statistics. So over the course of the 9 months on the road, just to remind you guys, I left on January 1st of 2020, and I arrived back home in mid-September. So during that time, I used 1,130 gallons of gas. I spent $2,671 on gas, and those are the two big ones. But the average cost per tank was $47.71. My tank is 26 gallons, and I always like to fill up as much of the tank as I could in one go. So I don't know how that's reflected there, but I thought I'd include that. I filled up 56 tanks during the course of those 9 months. And let's see here. The worst rate that I had was in San Francisco, and I spent $80 for nearly a full tank of gas, and gas was $3.99 then. The best rate that I received was in Missouri, and it was $1.77 for gas. So that's pretty incredible. I pumped gas in 32 of the 50 states. I pumped 6 tanks in California, 4 tanks in Florida, Montana, and Colorado. I pumped 3 tanks in Washington, Arizona, and Utah, and 2 tanks or 1 tank in the rest of them. Let's see here. 48%, which is 27 tanks of the 56 tanks that I filled. So 48% of the tanks that I filled over the course of those 9 months were filled in only 7 states, which is something interesting to think about. Let's see, I spent 70 days in Massachusetts. This is when the lockdown happened. I spent 70 days in Massachusetts, and I didn't fill up a single tank in the state of Massachusetts. So now in terms of oil changes, because after traveling 23,000 miles, I had to change my oil quite a bit. So I changed my oil 4 times, and I spent roughly $300, $293.81 to be exact, on oil changes. It was about $75 per oil change. I'm sure I could have done a little bit better there, but you do what you got to do when you're on the road. So let's see, in terms of gas, oil changes, and tire rotations, I spent $2,965. So right around the $3,000 mark. And I know many of you are probably wondering about food, but your food budget shouldn't really change. And depending on how often you want to go out, and depending on the quality of food that you want to eat, that dollar amount will be reflected through your purchases. For me, though, didn't really spend that much money on food. I stayed with friends a lot, and they cooked a lot, but when it was just myself, it was a fairly average bill when it came to my food costs. So let's see here. And like I said before, the entertainment costs and my sleeping or staying shelter cost was very, very low. The entertainment I just created for myself through hiking and spending time with friends and seeing the country, of course. And yeah, so those costs were very, very low. And depending on how much you actually want to do, those costs will be reflected for you there. So now I can share some fairly interesting stats. So before I got in the car every single day, or right after the following day of a long drive or even a short drive, just every single day, I would always log my miles and my oil and my MPG, just because I thought it was interesting and it would be cool to track. So the average trip distance, which means the average distance that I traveled every single day, was 145 miles. The max distance that I drove in one day was actually on my final day when I drove from Iowa, which was State 50, into St. Louis to visit some friends. And I traveled 707.4 miles in one day, which was right around 11 hours of driving. The shortest distance that I drove was technically 0, but if I actually put a number to it, it'd be 3.7. My average MPG over the course of the 23,000 miles that I drove was 20.5 miles per gallon, and that's not bad with consideration of the vehicle that I'm driving, which is a 2018 Chevy Silverado. Trucks aren't really known for getting that great of an MPG, so it was pretty cool to see that my number was over 20 there. Total miles traveled was 22,473.6. This is actually very, very interesting. So for the first leg of my travels, I left on January 1st and I arrived back home in the middle of June. And so for that period of time, I traveled 11,208 miles. I departed again on July 1st, arriving back home in mid-September for the end of the second leg of my journey. And I traveled 11,265 miles. So comparing my first leg and my second leg, they were only off by a little under 60 miles. So about 57 miles difference between the first and second leg of my journey, which is just crazy to think about. And I didn't actually record this, but I'm reverse engineering the math to think about how many hours I spent driving. So assuming a average speed of 60 miles per hour, I spent 375 hours driving. If you assume an average speed of 65 miles per hour, that number's 345 hours of driving. So I predict, I'm estimating that the number of hours that I spent driving was 350 hours over the course of 9 months and 23,000 miles. So with all of that being said, I think that's all the information I have for now. I know it's been a while since I've released a video, but I'm going to try to get back in the habit of releasing content, and if you guys have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I found these statistics and all this information to be very interesting, and I hope you did as well. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.